Now, I'm all about streamlining. My ideal is that if a parent contacts me and they are ready to start, I want to be able to get them started within 24 hours. So I don't want to be going back and forth with paperwork and signing contracts and all the rest of it. So I'm going to give you a whistle stop tour of how I onboard new clients and also just show you a few tools that I use to actually teach online. My setup is pretty simple. I teach English, so I don't really need additional tools that certain tutors, certain subjects might need, for example, maths tutors, science tutors. So I'll show you around everything that I do to give you a few ideas of how you might be able to streamline your process. So I'll quickly share my screen with you. Now, the first thing that happens when I onboard is I ask parents to complete a quick online form. And I create this in Zoho forms because it gives me a bit of flexibility. So, for example, I can set up rules like if they tick a certain box, show them specific fields. Now, if you don't have the budget to pay for an app, to pay for a form, then you could use something free like Google Forms. That's what I used to use. Once they complete this, at the very bottom, I asked them to agree to my terms and conditions. So this is somewhere where I might differ from some other tutors where they might ask people to sign an agreement. Instead of doing that, they agree to my terms and conditions. And my opening line in my terms and conditions is that when you pay for any of my services, you agree to these terms. So I kind of cover my back that way. So they tick those boxes, they submit this form, and then I use Zapier, I don't know how it's pronounced. And what that does is it shoots this information off to my accounts package. So I don't have to do much heavy lifting. So this gets sent to my accounts package. It sets this person up as a customer. And all I then do is I set up a recurring invoice that goes out to them every week. Some people prefer payments on a monthly basis, termly basis, whatever it might be. But I just set up my recurring invoice. Now, I pay for my accounts package because I like to set up automatic payments, which means that parents can just enter their card details and save it. Every time I raise an invoice, the money gets taken out. And that has saved me heaps of time from chasing payments. Also, if they do happen to miss the deadline, then the automatic reminder is also set out. So again, I don't have to worry too much about that. Now, if you don't have the budget to pay for an accounts package, I use Xero, Xero. You can go for something that's free, something like Wave accounting. That was actually what I used at the beginning. And they used to have that automated payment feature, which is connected through Stripe. But I stopped using it because for UK customers, they didn't allow that anymore. I think it was a couple of years ago. So, a couple of different options for you to use for your accounts package. And this is really worthwhile. It does make doing your accounts a lot easier. But even in things like Wave, you can set up those automatic reminders and it just looks really professional. So that's the first thing that happens. Once I get the notification that they've completed this form, I then send them a welcome pack. This is just a PDF that I've created in Canva. And I'm not going to show you the information because it's got some sensitive information in there, but I share things like their Zoom link. So to keep things easy, every single student of mine has the same link. So I share the Zoom link. I also use Google Classrooms, and I'm going to show you how I use that very shortly. So I give them their unique Google Classroom link. So when I onboard, the Google Classroom link is actually the only thing I have to change. I then download this and I email it across. So now they're ready to go. Invoices have been set up, everything's set up, welcome pack has been sent. I then use Google Classroom for my lessons, and I also use Microsoft Whiteboard. The way I use Google Classroom is I have a separate classroom for each student or for each group that I teach. I'll show you an example based on one of my students. So if I click on her classroom, I use this to set any homework. So I actually have a separate topic just for homework. And here you can see the due date, you can see whether it's been assigned, whether that person has returned the work. And I actually mark it in Google Classroom and return it back to them. So I quite like using Google Classroom. This is completely free, by the way, because you can also give parents access. So you give them the code, the student can join, the parent can join, or if you're teaching a group of students, they can all join this. You can even set them individual work. You can assign different work to different students. The rest of it is really divided into topics or things that are useful. At the very top, I always have useful information. And here I've got things like how to contact me, the Zoom link again. So just important information like that. And yeah, I store the topics here and I have my lesson notes here. So I date it, which I don't really have to do because it tells me the date of when I posted it, but it's just a habit. And that's where I have my notes of what I taught them last lesson. Now, if you want to give them feedback, for example, after every lesson, you can do that because under each one, you can actually provide a bit of feedback in there. And I quite use this, like using this for communication with my students as well. It just keeps everything in one place. So often they might send me messages in the stream so I can announce something or they can announce something, or they can also add comments to homework, for example, if they have a question. So my students and I, we actually communicate within Google Classroom as well. You can also do things like create grade books. I haven't for this student, but basically every time there's a piece of homework, it logs it in here and you can choose for that piece of work to be graded or not. So you can also track things like progress in there. So that's very quickly how I use Google Classroom. Another way I used to use it, well, I sometimes still use it, is I share resources. So if there are particular resources I want to share with my GCSE students, then I create a classroom just for resources and I give them the code. And it means that when they leave, all I do is I unenroll them from that as well. So again, I just like keeping everything in one place. I'm a really big fan of using Google Classroom. It works really well for me. If you use Google Calendar, which I do, you can also link these classrooms to your calendar if you wish as well. So that's how I administer my lessons. And I use Microsoft Whiteboard to actually carry out the lesson for the teaching part of it. I can't show you it because it's attached to my computer and it hasn't got a very long lead, but I use the Wacom One, I think it's called Wacom One graphics tablet. The reason why I'm telling you the brand name is because firstly, it's really good. I recommend it to everyone and I don't get any commission. I just recommend it. But also they've got two models, one by Wacom, which is different to Wacom One. Now, this is my pen that I use, and you can see on Microsoft Whiteboard, you've got different pen colors and different options for each pen in terms of thickness. You can erase everything all in one go, so I can clear that canvas just by clicking that. What I quite like is that you can upload different files. So I'm an English tutor, so often I'm uploading images, and that allows me to plan things like creative writing with students. And you can also upload PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint documents, and so on. Obviously, this is really effective if you are a Microsoft user. And what happens is when you plug your graphics tablet in, on the bottom right corner in the toolbar, you'll see that Microsoft Ink shows up, and that's where you access your Microsoft Whiteboard. So there you have it, my really simple process for onboarding and for teaching students. I hope you found that useful. I'd love to hear some ideas about what you do, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So please do type them in the comments.